Well, we can also now discuss all of this with Francesco Rizzuto. He's a professor of law at the University of East London and joining us from Liverpool. Professor, it's always great to have you on this news hour. I firstly want to touch on these sanctions that the European Union is considering imposing on Israel. And Kaya Kallas, the EU foreign policy chief, she was quoted as saying the aim is not to punish Israel. The aim is to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. But will these sanctions, if they are passed, because we have to note that they still need to go through the process in the EU Parliament, if they're passed, is this actually going to do anything to improve the situation in Gaza?
Good evening. I doubt it very much because they're not directed at Gaza. They are actually directed at trade with the Israeli state. And it only affects 37% of preferential trade. So it doesn't affect all trade. 60% of all trade will still be on zero tariffs. Obviously, it may have an impact on the Israeli population in terms of additional costs for them, but I don't actually think that it will be that significant because obviously the European Union does not want to alienate the Israeli population, including those that clearly support this far-right government of Israel.
Is the Israeli government, particularly Netanyahu and his right-wing ministers, would they be concerned with just the simple proposal of all of this? Because it was just a few days ago that Netanyahu came out to say that Israel has to become more self-sufficient and not so reliant on other countries, especially when it comes to its own defense. So is this something that would concern the government at all?
Well, they've already come out this afternoon in threatening retaliation against the Europeans, and that it's not in the Europeans' interest to do all of this. If you like, the arguments are just blah, blah symbols. The reality is that Israel really needs the United States for defense purposes and not the Europeans, though one or two European governments are basically still supplying Israel with some weaponry. I don't actually think, frankly, that Israel will be that bothered about the material impact of this at this point in time, because it's small fry, if you like, so far. I think they would be far more bothered if the European Union really cut off trade completely, the way some member states want to. But incidentally, it's not the European Parliament will have a say, but it's actually the Council. And here the two blocking states are, of course, Italy and Germany, for historical reasons, reasons of guilt, but also reasons of trade. If one of those states shifts, then the package, such as it is, will be passed. However, those two states do not appear to be wanting to shift their ground. So sadly, I don't think the package will end up being adopted at this point in time. And by the way, this is about the second or third time a similar kind of proposal has come before the Council.
Professor, I just want to see if there's any sort of positivity that we can look at when it comes to how more European and more Western countries are reacting to what the UN inquiry just yesterday described as a genocide taking place in Gaza. And could that be in some sort of symbolism when it comes to Palestinian recognition at the UN General Assembly, which is set to happen just next week? And we have to note that the majority of the world does recognize a Palestinian state. It's only Western North America, I believe Australia, who do not recognize it at all.
I think that the recognition of a state of Palestine symbolically will be very important. And there could be some legal ramifications of that, even though the Palestinian territory and its sovereignty over its territory is debatable, let's put it that way. But that will be a positive move. In Europe, most states want to recognize and will recognize a state of Palestine, as I say, with the exception of the Italians and the Germans. Of course, the big state that refuses to do so is the United States. So positively, I wish I could be more positive, but other than totally isolating Israel, it's extremely difficult to see what the rest of the world can actually do to get Israel to moderate its activities. Certainly, the UN report saying that essentially Israel is committing genocide. If it's not committing genocide, it's certainly committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. That's for absolute certain. But positively, no, I'm afraid everything is in the hands of two people who seem to be determined to achieve whatever their goals are, i.e. Netanyahu and his government, and some of them are being sanctioned, and of course, Mr. Trump, who is basically complicit in all of this.
Professor Rizzuto, greatly appreciate your analysis as always. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Good night.